Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine, and it's the playlist video, and this time we're going back to 1979. So going back to 1979, I've just picked a selection of albums that I've been playing over the recent weeks really, and so they haven't all been played today, but I've just been collecting things and thought, well, this would make a good video just looking at 1979. So it's not definitive, it's not every album or the classic ones. I'm not going to go into absolutely in-depth reviews on each album. I thought what I'd do might be a bit different, is I'll just talk about how I encountered these albums in the first place. Now some of that might be going back to when they were released, but sometimes it might be not that long ago at all, or it could be that I was introduced to a single from the album and then later on I decided to explore either the band further or the album itself. And the first one, as you can see behind me, is the band The Ruts, and the album is The Clarke from 1979. I was first introduced to this band via the single Babylon's Burning, which I still have. And I just thought it was a great guitar riff. Very, obviously it's punk. Punk by 1979 was beginning to run on less fuel, as we were on the verge of the new wave of British heavy metal kind of taking the attitude of punk with longer hair and longer guitar solos, and basically the way you'd expect it to evolve to really. So this album is quite a new addition to the collection, produced and arranged by Mick Glossop and the Ruts. And there's like reggae on here, there's pop, but there's some really good high energy punk as well. But yeah, the Clarke is a great album. This was a reissue, as I say. I've only had the single, which I bought at the time, and this is a newer edition. Sticking with the world of new wave and punk to some degree is my next choice, and it's Blondie, and I took this from the box set Against the Odds 1974 to 1982, and the album is Eat to the Beat. This is probably my favourite Blondie album. It used to be Parallel Lines, because that was the first one I ever bought. But for this one, I bought the two singles as they arrived, because this is 1979. It's worth pointing out that I used to buy a lot of singles, but what I'm trying to say is that this is the golden age of picture sleeves, because buying singles from when I started buying them early 70s, they didn't have picture sleeves. It's very rare. European releases had picture sleeves, but picture sleeves didn't really appear until 1977, 78. I remember one of the first ones I ever bought was Turned to Stone by ELO, for instance. But Blondie released two tracks from this album that I remember buying. One was Union City Blue, which I still have, and the other one was Atomic, which I bought as a 12-inch single. And I think when I did the tribute video to Kem, I thought that his drumming style was very much like Keith Moon. I mean, if you actually watch the video to Union City Blue, it's amazing playing. But this to me is one of my favourite Blondie albums, and I think it's consistent all the way through. This particular one from this box set also has Call Me on it, which was not on the original album, but it's still a great song. Next, I'm just going to touch on this because this was an important release for me in 1979. Is Ian Gillan wearing his wellies on the beach, although you can't see his wellies. This I bought on release because I'd seen the new version of Gillan at, where was it? Barbarella's in Birmingham, with Bernie Tormé on the guitar, and it's this classic lineup: John McCoy, Mick Underwood, Colin Towns and Ian. And this was such a return to form. I mean, I was a huge fan of the Ian Gillan band and the jazz rock fusion stuff, but this was like as close to purple as we were going to get at this point, I think. And it's such a superb album. I saw them at the Birmingham Odeon with this as well, and just absolutely fantastic. But I've done a separate video on in depth looking at this album, but I felt I couldn't not include it really. What else? This is another album that I've done a separate video on. I probably should update it because it's one of the first videos I ever did. And it's Narita by Riot. Riot, unfortunately, for whatever reason, chose this as their mascot that appeared on several of their album covers, which didn't translate well then and looks even more peculiar now perhaps. And one of the great things about the band Riot was obviously the music. They were also one of the most unluckiest bands on the planet with the amount of illness and early death that kind of went alongside with them really. But one of the things I want to mention here is, if I can find it on here, is Mark Rail on guitar. Now he's sadly no longer with us, but what I want to say about Mark is what an amazing guitarist he was, not just because of him playing on this record, which is more of a hard rock album than some of the more power metal stuff that came later. Is the fact that he was able to literally disappear, relearn or retool himself to play in a totally different style of guitar playing, and then come back out of the gates and relaunch the band. And he did this several times, but this will always remain a favourite of mine. It's 1979, but this is a special album because of the track Narita, which is stunning instrumental, but Waiting for the Taking, the way that the guitar solo builds on that track, especially towards the end with the ad-libs and the vocals. I think it's one of my favourite guitar solos really. They were already becoming one of my favourite bands, and I was playing with the Handsome Beasts at the time when this, although it's 1979, I'm on the cusp really of where I am with this album. And that we were signed to Heavy Metal Records, and the manager of the label, Paul Birch, had told us before I can't remember where I was playing, but he kind of appeared and said, "Oh, Phil, by the way, that's right, we'd released a single called Breaker, and we were getting quite a lot of interest from America." And he said, "Phil, I thought you might be interested." He said, "You said you'd mentioned you liked the band Riot." He said, "Well, Riot are playing Breaker by the Handsome Beasts before they come on stage on their current US tour." That was such an amazing moment for me to think that this band that weren't that well known at this point, Narita, when the next album comes out, you know, they really hit the ground running, but they were still very underground albums. So to hear that they were actually playing a record that I was playing on myself before they came on stage was a fine moment. Narita, every home should have one. Next is Simple Minds and Life in a Day from 1979, with Simple Minds looking incredibly young there. This came into my collection, or I became aware of this band. I was watching the Ogre Whistle Test, and I was trying to expand my listening to other areas. I was also playing in a band called Night Service, who were more influenced by new wave, and on the Ogre Whistle Test, Simple Minds appeared for the first time, and they did two songs. They did Life in a Day, I'm pretty sure they did, but they definitely did Chelsea Girl, and I was absolutely kind of transfixed by the power chords in this track and the fact the guitars. There was a guitar. Everyone was playing Strats, Telecasters, SGs, and all of a sudden Yamaha appear with their own SG, and there was Bill Nelson started playing one, Ray Fenwick was playing one, and the guitarist from this band started playing one. But this is still probably one of my favourite Simple Minds albums because of the track Chelsea Girl, which I think they moved on from this sound quite early on, because this was probably the closest they were to kind of be more punk than the kind of stadium 80s band they became quite soon after this. So Life in a Day by Simple Minds. Next is Scorpions and Love Drive. I was tentatively getting into the Scorpions from the year before with Taken by Force and Tokyo Tapes, but this is the one where it really came together because Michael Schenker's on it. Obviously Uli John Roth had disappeared, gone on to do his own thing, and Matthias Jabs was on here, and the rock club thing that I went to called Bogarts started to play tracks from this quite heavily, especially on a Thursday night when it was kind of like metal night. And the tracks that got played were obviously Loving You on Sunday Morning, Another Piece of Meat, which I bought as a single, which is on vibrant green vinyl, which I still have, and Coast to Coast, which is a great instrumental. But they also had lots of light and shade on here with the track Holiday, Love Drive, Can't Get Enough. This is my original album from that period on Harvest Records. So the Scorpions, Love Drive. What was the one after that? Was that I can't remember. I think the one after that I didn't like so much. Is that the one with the dog on the front and the Animalizers or something? No, that's Kiss. Can't remember. It's gone from my head. As soon as I finish doing this video, it will reappear. Next is one of those records that... This is the first Gamma album. This is Ronnie Montrose. I didn't know anything about this. I didn't even know it was coming out. So when we used to go to Bogarts on a Saturday morning in Birmingham, we'd have a couple of drinks or three, and then afterwards we'd go around the record shops, and I used to just go from A to Z because there was only so much that got covered in Sounds or NME or Melody Maker. There's no Kerrang then. And so there was a possibility that you would spot something that was new that you didn't know anything about. And so I stumbled across this and was intrigued by the cover. And I couldn't really work out who was on it because it doesn't say, although I could see the pictures, and I just thought, this guy here looks a bit like Ronnie Montrose, and obviously the last time I'd seen him was in 1976 on Jump On It album, although the other one, Open Fire, I hadn't got that yet. And I took a punt. I looked at the titles, Solar Heat, Ready for Action, Fight to the Finish, and thought, could be a rock band. And it was indeed. And so I never thought the production on this was a bit strange. I think it's a bit kind of that the vocals were too loud, and there's something about it. The Rock Candy remaster kind of sorts that out in the remastering. But Thunder and Lightning, I'm Alive, Razor King, they're all good. There's some great echo, bounce back echo on Razor King, good guitar moment, but it was Solar Heat and Ready for Action that really did it. And again, my time in the Handsome Beast, we ourselves used to play those two tracks as our kind of build up to coming on stage. And my favourite track off the album is Fight to the Finish. I think the vocals there from Patron are absolutely wonderful. It's one of my favourite tracks from Gamma overall. Gamma 2 had the edge from 1980, but this was a fine introduction and a fine return for Mr. Montrose. But again, he would sabotage himself not long after this. I love Gamma 3, by the way, but I just felt they should have carried on. Next is New England. This band features quite a bit on this channel. I got to know this band because of the single called "Don't Ever Wanna Lose You," which on the Affinity label, which I still have, no picture sleeve, knew nothing about them. How did I hear that then? I either heard it again at Bogart's, or it could have been on a TV program where they chose. I remember Puny Undernourished Kid was on a program with Noddy Holder reviewing it, so it wasn't that one. Maybe heard it on the radio. I can't remember. But I played "Don't Ever Want to Lose You" over and over and over again. It had one of these choruses that was just one of those songs that you just never tired of, and they just kept going with it, and then they'd phasing over the chorus, and it just get round and round in circles. So I I took a chance on this when the full album came out, and Nothing to Fear and Shoot, our first tracks on side 2, are just immense. The production, the separation between the guitar, the bass, the keyboards, the everything. It's the vocals. There's a real element of electric like orchestra in here, but there's some it's really just a fantastic hard rock album. It was produced by Paul Stanley, which I thought was enhanced the production in set. Paul Stanley, what a great ear for music he has, huge Kiss fan. See, I didn't know then until I read Paul's autobiography much later on, that he was born with a deformity. He can only hear in one ear, is what I'm trying to say. So he's always heard the world in mono, and in the book it talks about his time on stage when he was doing that play, where he had to ask everyone to make sure that wherever the mics were, it was over one side so he could hear it properly. Phantom of the Opera, that's it. So I thought, how did he mix this? How did he produce it? He didn't mix it, sorry. But how did he produce it? How did he do that? I could just guess the people at the time didn't know that was the case, because of his hair would cover the fact that he was born with one ear. So that was the issue, but it doesn't affect it, because it is a fantastic sounding album. Hello, Hello, Hello is very earlow, and the other track, Alone Tonight, is another one of my favourites. It's more of a ballad, but it's got such great power chords in the chorus. New England, they're all 1979. Why do I keep saying that? Another album I decided to take a chance on was You're Never Alone with a Schizophrenic by Ian Hunter. And this was because it's quite an experimental year, isn't it, actually, for me? The Ruts, Simple Minds, Blondie. There's quite lots of variations going on here with stuff. What else have I covered? Yeah, So I was looking around. I just wanted to have something in my collection that was different, to kind of pad out other aspects of my listening prowess, and I just thought this had a lot of publicity behind it. It was everywhere. And I thought, Ian Hunter, I like Mott. I'm gonna take a chance with this, and I did, and it is one of my favourite Ian Hunter albums. And obviously tracks like, I thought there was a song on it called Bastard, so I thought, I wonder what that's like, and it is a great track. But if I think about my favourite songs on here, the one where the whole focus comes down on is The Outsider, Hunter's Home, The Outsider, which is kind of like a cinematic story about being out in the Wild West, and this lone guy out there, and Mick Ronson's guitar with all that reverb dripping off it. It's just an amazing song. It's a highlight from the album, and the whole album features some absolute classic Ian Hunter songs, but The Outsider is the one that I would say I play the most. So yes, this was an album that turned into a jumping off point for going backwards in time to Ian's CBS albums, and going forwards in time to what came next, which was Welcome to the Club in 1980. I'm still trying to think of that Scorpions album. It's the one with the zoo on, which I never really liked that track very much, which so Love Drive is the one that I still see, and then Blackout came afterwards, so I kind of missed out that one, whose name still escapes me. Anyway, yeah, we'll go here next. The Babies, Head First. This is fab. One of my favourite vocalists is John Waite, and one of my favourite bands is the Babies, and I think many people would see this as the top of everything that they did, because it's the Ron Nevison production with all the strings. After this, with Keith Olsen came in, it became more kind of, well, rock orientated, I suppose, but this is just lush strings and arrangements. So Love Don't Prove Me Right, Every Time I Think of You was a single. I Was One, about going to the dentist. Now that's White Lightning. Run to Mexico, stunning track, and it's side 2. Head First, great rock song. You Got It, absolutely beautiful ballad. Please Don't Leave Me Here, the vocals are almost free, Paul Rodgers-ish in a way, but great production, and California. Just the 3 of them are mentioned here. So this is John Waite, Tony Brock, Wally Stocker, Michael Corby on keyboards, but his picture doesn't feature because he'd gone at this point. And I don't think the band were ever quite the same again, but this is a absolutely stunning album. The next one was the first album I ever bought by Jefferson. Starship. It's the first thing I ever heard by Jefferson, Starship. And all of my friends bought this. And they all bought it because of one song, which went straight up into the singles chart. And that song was called Jane. The rest of it was a bit hit and miss in places. Awakening was an epic song, rock music, and it was a bit kind of cheesy, perhaps. Things to Come is brilliant. Girl with the Hungry Eyes is okay, but yeah, it was again produced by Ron Nevison. But Jane, the Freedom at Point Zero by Jefferson, Starship. Next was Ease, REO Speedwagon and 9 Lives. And the reason why I bought this, there was a compilation called Kilowatts, double album. I did a video about this, so you just search for Kilowatts and you'll find it. And on that album was a song called Back on the Road Again, which was the highlight of that double sampler. And I just kept playing that over and over again. I thought it was one of the best guitar riffs I'd heard. I thought the whole way the song was created and built was brilliant. So I just thought, wow, the rest of the album is going to be just like that. It wasn't. The opening song, Heavy on Your Love, is, but that and Back on the Road Again are the two songs that bookend this record, are the best ones on here. After this, of course, we're going to have High Infidelity, which was their breakthrough album into the UK. But the other songs, Rock and Roll Music, Drop It, Only the Strong Survive, are all, they're not as strong as those opening and closing songs. But Back on the Road Again is still my favourite REO Speedwagon track. Shall we have some jazz next, or shall we have some heavy metal? I'm gonna, let's do some jazz, and it's on CD this, and it's from the Stanley Clarke complete 1970s epic albums collection, and the album is I Want to Play for You. This is brilliant. I got into this because somebody I worked with was trying to expose me to more jazz fusion and jazz rock and stuff, and I was starting to listen to this more, and he mentioned Stanley Clarke, and he thought this would be a really good album for me to probably like straight away. And the reason, of course, is Jeff Beck is on here. In fact, there's a cast of thousands on here, isn't there, really? But yeah, Lee Ritenour's on here and all sorts of people, but it was basically Jeff Beck was the main track. So that was Rock and Roll Jelly, Hot Fun, Streets of Philadelphia, School Days, of course, and School Days is a great album with Billy Cobham on it as well. But this is a absolutely brilliant live double album. There is a single CD version which misses out some of the key moments, so the version you get in this little box set, which is a double, is the one to get. So I Want to Play for You, Stanley Clarke, but absolutely fantastic double live jazz fusion, jazz rock album. And there is some more jazz to come up in a minute. Another one from the Purple family. I've got to mention it, and I am going to do an in-depth video looking at this album because it's interesting how people talk about it. Down to Earth. Some people talk about this now as being like the not a very good record, or people were confused by it when it came out. No, they weren't. It was a bit like Mr. Universe. The kind of reputation of the Purps was kind of growing because as we headed towards the new wave of British heavy metal, really. And this was a really breakthrough album for Rainbow. Since You've Been Gone was a massive hit. So Richie Blackmore was in Top of the Pops. He was on Radio 1. His guitar was being played on the radio wherever you were. You could talk about, this is someone I really love. This is Richie Blackmore, new singer, Graham Bonnet, absolutely stunning. The next single got, well, we all thought it was going to get to number 1 all night long. And of course, it was only be months away before he headlined at Castle Donington Monsters of Rock. But this album was definitely seen as a high watermark. I know it wasn't the same as Rising, but at the time, now of course people might look at it maybe a bit different, but then this was seen as the album you had to have. I mean, Eyes of the World should have opened it. That is the kind of way that you would expect Rainbow to open an album would be, with Eyes of the World. It's an epic song, and also his guitar tone here was really forward in the mix. That was the other thing you noticed after Long Live Rock and Roll, where it felt like his guitar was further back in the mix. And I know Ronnie James Dio was on it, and it was seen as their machine head at the time, but this had more power in the way that it sold and how it raised Rainbow's profile within the world of rock music and beyond, really. Making Love is a great track. No Time to Lose was a bit kind of filler, bit B-sidey. Since You've Been Gone, Love's No Friend, which is a great spotlight for Graham Bonnet. Danger Zone and Lost in Hollywood are the two real epic rock songs on this album. They really, great riffs, great performances, great guitar playing. There were two parts in this album where everything drops back and Blackmore does like a solo run just on his own, and it's him and he's in complete control. The pictures of the band inside the cover, the singer looked like James Dean, which he had obviously done something with his hair. It looked very different as he was doing his best to make sure he kept it. And the B-sides of the singles, Bad Girls was a great track and Was Home. The instrumental of All Night Long was also a classic Rainbow. There are 3 left. Yeah, I'm going to mention that because we've just landed in Purple Land. I have to mention this. This is a real, as we would now call, a cash grab. Around the time, as I say, Purple's reputation wasn't going anywhere, and the record label was trying to think of ways of making more money out of, they hadn't got anything left in the tank. But they had been releasing a series of singles called New, Live and Rare, and they started off with Smoke on Water, which ended up on the front page of Sounds. The new wave and punk was everywhere, but Smoke on the Water got back in the charts, and so they released another one with a live version of Black Knight on it, and then they released a third one, and they must have been thinking, what do we do? So they made this the Mark II Purple singles, and they deleted it on the day of release. And the thing is with it is that it just included the edits from those singles. So when they say it was the Mark II singles, Only Never Before was an actual single from that period, and that was Never Before and When a Blind Man Cries, which was the B-side. The rest of it were these hybrids, more recent EPs, really. So Smoke on the Water, Black Knight and Child in Time. Black Knight had already appeared on 24 Karat Purple. Child in Time was heavily truncated. Woman from Tokyo, again, was again from one of these EPs. And Painted Horse was an outtake from Who Do We Think We Are. It had some nice pictures on the back and a bit of writing from Jeff Barton. and it's on purple vinyl, but it literally wasn't, and even then it wasn't seen as an essential purchase, and it's, even though it was deleted on the day of release, it's still quite easy to find. Next, and last but one, is Judas Priest and Unleashed in the East. This is an American, is it American or is it Canadian? There's a reason why I'm saying this. Yes, it's Canadian pressing. This is one of the most warped records, I mean that physically, not in how it sounds, warped records in my collection. And I can't remember the name of the shop, Dale End in Birmingham, and they had this in the window, and it was a really knockdown price. And I know so many people, so many of my close friends, we all went and bought it and took it, you know, because of the price. And all of us watched this record go round on our deck like the waves coming in over the beach. It was that warped, but the needle stuck to it and never left the deck. And it's unfair. It gets called Unleashed in the studio. That people have I've just said it, look, haven't I? But I think that's unfair. I mean, I think Rob Halford was suffering from a cold and he redid some of his vocals. But I mean, look at everything else going on there. The year before, UFO did Strange Night, and there's a couple of songs on that album that weren't even in the live set. They were recording in the studio afterwards, and then they just put the crowd on afterwards, so they weren't even live at all. So I think we should leave Judas Priest alone. This is classic Judas Priest. The only question one should have is, why was it not a double live album? Surely Judas Priest, by this point, who were a huge band, warranted, deserved a double live album. The 70s was the time of the double live album. Think of how many people didn't get one. Robin Trower, Pat Travis, Alex Harvey. But Priest should have had one. I mean, Exciter, Running Wild, the version of Running Wild is superb. Sinner, Ripper, Green Manalishi, brilliant version. Diamonds and Rust and Victims of Changes, probably one of the most definitive versions of that song. And then Genocide and Tyrant, all from Sad Wings, aren't they, those last tracks? In fact, how many tracks are from Sad Wings? 3, 4, wow. Great. And finally, I'm going to end with some jazz, with a double live album from the 70s. 8:30. I didn't have this in 1979. This came later on. I didn't get Weather Report for quite a while. And the reason? There is no guitarist. I had a real thing about listening to anything without guitars in it. Being a guitarist, that's what I looked for. So this was a band that didn't have one. So I just thought, I don't need that. And it was when the same friend at work who got me into Stanley Clarke and Return to Forever and Billy Cobham, and kept playing me or lending me Weather Report stuff. And eventually, I think it was a song called Gibraltar, was it? That I started to take an interest. And then coming back home from work, I went into WH Smith's, and they were having a sale on cassettes. And one of the cassettes they had for £1.50 was 8:30 by Weather Report. So I thought, well, I'll give that a go. It's double. And this is the one that I got into. And I've got this on CD about 3 times because it's been released in so many different versions, a single CD, a double CD. And this double vinyl version I didn't get until literally 18 months ago. But yeah, this is a superb album, and it's the classic lineup, because it's Jaco Pastorius is on this, on bass, an absolutely brilliant, sadly missed musician. But yeah, that's the last one in my 1979 playlist, is some proper jazz fusion with Weather Report. So, what would you have picked from 1979? It's quite a long list anyway, but as I say, some of them I've covered before, but I just thought it'd be interesting for you to know how I discovered some. So let me know if you've got any of these. Which ones do you have? How did you find them? Is it more recent? Good chance, I imagine. Or what ones would you have put in place of anything that I chose? So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Remember, music is the healer and the doctor. Take care. Please subscribe, become a patron, and you can join our private groups on Facebook and on WhatsApp, and come along to our own private pub called the Now Spinning Arms, which meets up twice a month via Zoom. Remember, music is the healer and the doctor. Take care, all of you, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon.